The 2025 WWE Hall of Fame induction ceremony took place in Winchester, Nevada. That's the official name of the unincorporated town of Las Vegas, where the ceremony took place at the Fontainebleau, Las Vegas Resort and Casino, whatever the official name is. I think that's quite the fancy term. It's a new hotel and casino that was built in Vegas, just opened in 2020, and they showed us a lot of it when the show first went on the air. It's much more modernized compared to some of the older hotels and casinos. So we start the show off. First, we'll start with the red carpet. I'll go when I first started watching. I didn't see the whole red carpet, but I saw most of it. You saw Jackie Redmond and Peter Rosenberg hosting. They interviewed Tiffany Stratton at first, and she's with her real-life boyfriend, Ludwig Kaiser, as Charlotte revealed. I think most people already know anyways. And just saying, Tiffany's beautiful. Looks really attractive, and Jackie also looks great too, I have to say. So you have Byron Saxon also there. He's interviewing people. He interviewed Titus O'Neil, who was there. He's still with the company. I believe Sean Waltman was interviewed earlier, probably about Triple H, his good friend. They had Jey Uso interviewed by Jackie. Byron Saxon interviewing Gunter. Jackie also, she was the one interviewing Charlotte Flair. That went on for a bit, and it's funny, as they wrapped up, we see Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch walking by. First time I think we've seen Becky Lynch on camera in close to a year. It's been a while. Jackie interviewed Radio and his wife Kim on the red carpet, and then you had Peter Rosenberg talking to Triple H and Stephanie on the red carpet, and they unveil a statue to Triple H. You had Bianca Belair interviewed next by Jackie, and Montez Ford, her husband, joined them. They had Byron interview Logan Paul. Everyone hates him. Finally, the last one they interviewed was Paul Heyman. Jackie Redmond's the one who interviewed him. And then finally, the Hall of Fame starts. The 2025 WWE Hall of Fame induction ceremony starts. And we see a touching Hall of Fame video to start off. We see a lot of deceased wrestlers, which is always sad. It's one thing when a wrestler's inducted after he's deceased, but when you see so many guys who've passed away, and we see them accepting their Hall of Fame ring, accepting their induction, and it's really sad actually to see that. And then, as I said, they showcased the Fontainebleau Casino and Hotel. I have to pronounce that right. I know they're doing, I think, an NXT on Tuesday, and I think they do that roast of WrestleMania or whatever, actually following WrestleMania on Sunday. So he had Michael Cole and Pat. So God, pronounce their names right. It's late at night. I apologize. Actually, it's really early in the morning. That's for people watching on the East. It's a late one. Anyway, we had Michael Cole and Pat McAfee hosting. Cole is fine. Pat's just annoying to me, and it's especially annoying when it's early hours in the morning for us on the Eastern time zone. I'm sure people out west, they're probably upset too, because it's so late at night for them. They're looking at well into 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning almost, or 1 in the morning. Here, I mean, man, Pat's fine if you're watching him at 8 at night. He can get really annoying when you're trying to stay awake to watch a show. But I also have to say, I really like the new stage. It's more of an old school Hall of Fame. The ring thing, I was never a huge fan of that. It was fine. It was just because they used to tape the Hall of Fame right after SmackDown ended. This time, it's more of a stage. It's kind of like what the old Hall of Fame used to be. They used to always just be in theaters anyway. I like the setting so much more. It was a smaller crowd, and you won't have to worry about fans making noise, fans being annoying, fans chanting stuff. None of that. It's a much more of an intimate setting, and it works so much better. I wish they do every Hall of Fame like this. I just wish that they have the audacity to stop treating people whose most of your viewers, I probably assume, on the East Coast or even on the West Coast. If you do this again, please do a better start time, an easier start time to watch this. That's the one thing I just don't like about this Hall of Fame, because other than that, it was a very good ceremony. So Lex Luger is the first inductee. Diamond Dallas Page inducts Lex Luger. He recaps his career. He talks about the time that he was there when Lex became a paraplegic. And then he talked about Lex's true strength. And, when he mentioned that story, I remember hearing Lex Luger on a podcast interview with Chris Van Vliet, and he's talking about how Diamond Dallas Page was there when he had that neck injury that led to him being a paraplegic, and DDP eventually introduces him, and Lex Luger has an okay speech, a shorter speech, not too long, but first of all, he was able to stand, and they actually revealed that something happened in the airport. I guess he took a bump, I don't know, and it was supposed to be a much longer walk, but he was able to stand, and he used the podium to help himself stand up as a crutch, and he talked the whole time standing. He says he's never thought he'd be in the Hall of Fame. He thanks his friends, his family, his fans. He brings up particular people, including this guy named Pastor Steve, who's very close to him. He also thanks his mother, who passed away, and how she wanted him to be in the Hall of Fame. The one thing I thought was, why wouldn't he mention Sting? Sting is the one guy who's closer to Luger than DDP was, probably. And you heard that podcast. He's so close to him. I don't know if that has something to do with the controversy, where Sting's under contract with AEW, and people thought he'd induct Lex. It didn't happen. I don't even know if he was there. I was a little unnerved by that, but other than that, it was a good speech. It was a fine speech. He was good. He was humble. Such a changed guy what he used to be. Obviously, no mention of Elizabeth. That's a really sore subject. But yeah, it was brief, to be honest, but it was fine. I liked it. He was a very humble guy. I enjoyed Luger's speech. Then you go to the Legacy wing. You have James Harris, a.k.a. Kamala. They show highlights of his career. Much better presentation than it used to be, I have to say, for the Legacy wings. It used to just be all of them crammed up in one video package, and then they're all on the same screen together. Each of them gets their own highlighted Legacy wing, which I liked. I just wish that I think Kamala was a guy who was big enough name where you could have just have his own induction. I don't think it would have been a big deal, but you know what? It is fine if you're just going to have, at least they're in the Hall of Fame. His family was there. He's inducted. He didn't get a speech, but I'm just glad that he at least got that. He had Michelle McCool up next. Undertaker is out to induct his wife, Michelle McCool. I'm wondering, is he going to do another TED Talk speech like his Hall of Fame speech in 2022 that was like an hour long? But I think I might have been topped tonight, but we'll get to that later. Yeah, Taker, he's the dead man here. I mean, he's Mark when he talks, but he didn't come out to the American Badass theme. He came out to the classic dead man theme, which I was so happy to see. We never get to hear that anymore. He just really put over his wife as a performer, as a person. He gets emotional here as he introduces her, and he talks about how much she was a pioneer and how much she meant to the women's revolution, and that's his views on that. I think with Michelle McCool, she was a decent wrestler. It's just it's one of those things. What are you really going to do at that time? They didn't really want them to do much. She was very athletic. I don't know if she never had an independent wrestling background or anything like that, but she was just very athletic. I remember her being that much more than most of the other girls who were just bikini models. That was something that stood out about her. And then she had the whole thing with Cool, and eventually Undertaker introduces her. Michelle McCool's speech goes on next. She talks when she first got the call. It was in the Divas era, the Divas search. She mentions how she helped push through the first ever women's tables match. I don't remember that match too much, but I think it was at a TLC. She recalls this really bad health scare that I never heard about this. I never knew this was that bad. I was really surprised at how she was really going in depth at how serious it was. I had no idea about this, so that was interesting. And she really thanks the company. She puts over a particular woman who she worked with, especially her tag team partner, Layla. She really loves Layla. She absolutely said so many good things about her. Layla we saw on TV. I think it's the first time we've seen Layla in 10 years. I think she was retired 10 years ago or something officially. And this is the first time we've seen her in so long. So we saw Layla on camera. She's really praising her. She really loved Cool, and she even teases a reunion with Cool. I'm sure they'll do a reunion one day. I think Layla, I'm surprised they didn't put her in with Michelle. They could have just had Cool on. I wouldn't have a problem with that. But Michelle going on separately is fine too, because she was pushed more as the top female star than Layla. But Layla did have a very good career for what they wanted from women at the time. So I hope Layla gets in eventually. I think it's just a little bit harder without Michelle there because she was the bigger name. And, she is Undertaker's wife, obviously. But I thought Michelle overall, she talked a lot about her faith and how people close to her didn't take her a lot. I thought it was a decent speech. I liked so for me, 2 for 2 at that point. I enjoyed both speeches. Then they go to the Legacy Wing, and we have Dory Funk Sr. highlight his career. They had Dory Funk Jr. talking in the video about his father, who's still Dory Funk Jr. is alive. Unfortunately, Terry Funk passed away in 2023. Really sad. I remember I didn't make a tribute video. I really wish I did. I did one for Bray Wyatt, who I think they died within days of each other. I really wish I put one out for Terry Funk because so much contributions to the business. But they mentioned there Dory Funk Sr. without his contributions, without his success, his 2 sons, Dory Jr. and Terry, wouldn't have been there. And I liked the presentation there, and they showed Dory Funk Jr. in the crowd, or in the audience. I don't say crowd. He had Michael Cole and Pat McAfee there. They mentioned people in the crowd. McAfee mentioned Becky Lynch, which got a big pop. Becky's there. Then we see a Triple H video, and I liked how brief it was. It was one of the earlier smaller parts. I mean, the much larger one was the one that came out later, but they just showed different images of him in NXT, the business world. And one thing that was interesting was there was actually a mini Bray Wyatt tribute, which I liked. It was about 11-second Bray Wyatt tribute within the video package. I thought that was well done. I don't know if Bray was mentioned in the Hall of Fame speech. We couldn't mention there were so many people, but I like that quick tribute. And eventually, I think Bray will go in one day. I don't know when. So we had a natural disasters. So no one inducted them, but it made sense because there were so many people on stage talking. It makes sense for someone to induct them. So you had the Tenta family speak first, and you have the whole most of Earthquake's kids. His son talked first, and you'll know the family from Dark Side of the Ring. They came off all, I thought, very wholesome, very nice. Very sad story what happened to Earthquake. I saw them on the Dark Side of the Ring, so I remember their faces. And the son spoke first. He was good. And then the daughter announced that she's actually wrestling, which got a good pop, actually, from the audience. And she thanks her Uncle Fred, who is, of course, Typhoon. And Typhoon really didn't talk much about his career. He really put over Earthquake. He talked about how close he was with him, how much he misses him, and he really wishes he was there with him. It was actually really sad, and it was a wonderful tribute to his friend Earthquake. I thought it was great by Typhoon, who is also, by the way, the uncle of Cody Rhodes. And I thought overall it was a good presentation. It was a lot too long of a speech, and most people were talking, and I liked it. I thought it was too much of a downer. I thought it was a nice tribute to Earthquake. That's how I found the speech to be. So I think some people were hoping, would he do it? Would he mention the Shockmaster? No, that's just comedy. But there was no Shockmaster. But I thought it would have been a funny touch if they just brought out the mask. So then they do highlights of Stone Cold Steve Austin's best stunners, which was it was quick, and then they had Pat McAfee talking over it. Then they have CM Punk out to induct the Immortal Moment, and that's, of course, Bret the Hitman Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin from WrestleMania 13. Punk puts over the match quickly. He mentions Ken Shamrock. He just really put over the match how much both Bret and Austin mean to him. Eventually, they both come out, and you have Bret Hart first out, then Stone Cold Steve Austin out, and they both give speeches. They revealed the Immortal Moment bust, which is cool. It shows half of Bret's face and half of Austin's face. Bret says he is proud to have 3 Hall of Fame rings. He's the first one to get there. And it's going to be tough for anyone else to ever get to 3 Hall of Fame rings. And, Bret's had so many career matches, so many great classics. I mean, he could end up with well over 5. I think the match with Owen at the Steel Cage match at SummerSlam 94 would be a good candidate. And it's endless the amount of great Bret Hart matches you can choose from. And Stone Cold Steve Austin also has a whole bunch of great matches you can choose from as well. And Bret really put over the match, and Stone Cold, and then Austin goes on next. He puts over everyone involved, including Ken Shamrock. So Shamrock got a couple good mentions at the Hall of Fame. Maybe that helps his chances of ever being inducted. I don't know if he'll get in, but it helps him. He mentioned Vince McMahon, who wasn't booed. I thought Vince might get booed. He wasn't. He mentioned Jim Ross and Jerry King Lawler all on commentary and how much they put the match over and how much it meant. And he really put over the match. He thanked Bret. He says, without Bret, there's no Austin. He really put over Bret, and he said that before. I've heard Austin say it multiple times. Without this match, Austin isn't where he is, and that's true. A lot of people talk about the Austin 316 promo. That definitely had an effect, but this is really what made Stone Cold this match. And eventually, Bret and Austin brings out some beers. Him, Pat, and Bret all drink. I didn't know Bret. I don't know if Bret drank, but he drank a little bit. But Austin and Pat do the big Austin thing where they chug it, whatever. It was a cool moment. And then they go to the Legacy Wing, and this one's for Ivan Koloff. I wish they would have done more. They called him the Russian Bear in the Hall of Fame, and they do a quote in about Russia and how you can be the bear. I forget exactly what it was, but it's an interesting quote about the great Russian bravery and being the bear and bears well. And then the whole thing about Ivan Koloff, he's the third WWF champion of all time. Everyone knows what he's known for. That's beating Bruno Sammartino in Madison Square Garden. They had highlights from old documentaries with Sammartino talking about Koloff, which was cool. And that's what he's most known for, was beating Sammartino. I thought they could have had his own induction, but he's very old. He died a long time ago, so I understand that. And they actually showed his family in the audience, which I'm glad they got. Kamala's family, Dory Funk Sr.'s family, and Ivan Koloff's family all there. They got to see their family member inducted. That's a good thing, even though it's only Legacy. The Legacy proportion of this event was so much better than than it was previously, where they would just do a whole bunch of video packages, and everyone was crammed into one video package, and they just get one picture. I liked how each of them had their own individual spot. That was so much better. Then we go to the Triple H video package. It has Nothing Else Matters by Metallica playing. It was really great. And Shawn Michaels inducts Triple H. He has an early call time for NXT. It's insane. It's currently 4:40 where I am, but in Vegas it's 1:40. So it's got about, the Hall of Fame ended a while ago now, about half hour ago. So it's probably gonna get about 3.5 hours of sleep. No, he won't get that. Not even close. Yeah, he's gonna have to be at the arena before at 5. So he'd be lucky to even get close to 3 hours. He's gonna be exhausted. Hope it doesn't affect the show. I don't think it will. But Shawn Michaels inducts Triple H. He mentions him marrying the boss's daughter, and how he really puts over Triple H, and how it was a joke. Well, he mentioned he married her and he did it to get ahead. He puts that to rest, and he really puts over Triple H of how much he worked, and he highlights his career. Then he really put him over for NXT, which was cool. He joked about the Reign of Terror from like 2002 to 2005. So some inside jokes, a lot less than the DX speech, infamous DX speech in 2019. And yeah, Shawn just really strongly put him over. It was similar to when Triple H put over Shawn Michaels in 2011. It was very good here, and I liked it a lot. And then he had Triple H come out, speech, him and Shawn embrace. Immediately they hug. And Triple H is very emotional to start. First, he mentions the game. He thanks Lemmy of Motorhead. He thanks Rich Herring, who is still with the company. He thanks his parents who are there. Both of them are still alive. His sister, Lynn, who's alive. He thanks Arnold Schwarzenegger for inspiring him. He brings up Killer Kowalski and thanks him. And then he thanks Eric Bischoff for signing him to WCW. He really thanked Dusty Rhodes. He got emotional. Thanked Arn Anderson, Harley Race. He thanks Steve Austin, who he mentioned multiple times. Mick Foley mentioned several times, it seemed like. Terry Taylor, he mentioned, put him over. He really put over Steven Regal. Talked about how Regal and Triple H were going to be the Blue Bloods in WCW, and they were going to be a top heel team. And Regal was the one telling Triple H, telling Paulovec at the time. That's who was known as, whatever his name was in WCW, John Paulovec. He was telling him to go to WWF. Vince McMahon will make you a big star. Go there. And Triple H, he took his advice, and they're still very good friends. Regal was crying quite a bit here. I know they were close, but I didn't realize how close they were, and he really shared that story. He then talked about the Clique. We all know he would. He brought up Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Kid, 1-2-3 Kid, X-Pac / 6-Pac, whatever you want to call him, and of course Shawn Michaels. He told us a really funny story about the Clique, and they were in a Denny's in early hours in the morning. So they were there, they were hungry, and Sean Waltman gets all these drinks, and he passes out, and all of them are doing drugs. And he mentions, he was never the guy who would drink and do drugs. He was always the kind of guy who would, he was a designated driver. That's how he was. He was a very responsible friend. He went on for a while. It was a funny story. Waltman was laughing pretty much the whole time. So was Nash. Kevin Nash and Sean Waltman were in the audience, sitting right next to each other. Sean was backstage, and Hunter was there. And obviously, Scott Hall unfortunately passed away 3 years ago in 2022. I really wish I did a tribute to him too, on my channel. But he went into Scott for a while after that. Really talked about how much he misses him. I thought that was a good tribute to Scott Hall. And all the Clique guys were inducted together, I believe. They've all seen themselves get inducted, I believe. Even Triple H was inducted with DX, but and Scott was there. So I assume they've all been in the Hall of Fame together. Just Triple H never had his own singular induction. He then talked about China and DX, and he really put over China, how they met, how much she meant to his career. That was cool. I knew he'd put her over. There was a time when he won it, but I liked that he mentioned her. And then he went to talk about the second version of DX. He was really thanking Road Dogg. He didn't mention Billy Gunn, I believe. He mentioned him briefly, but not as much. He really put over Road Dogg. And then he talked about Austin, how he could give him advice. Then talked about Foley. He really thanked Foley a lot, put him over a lot, and thanked him for all the great matches in 2000. Both that street fight at the Royal Rumble 2000, Madison Square Garden, classic street fight, and then the Hell in a Cell match, and then Foley coming out of retirement at WrestleMania, which wasn't as good, but he really put over Foley. And then he mentions Randy Orton and Batista and how proud he is of them. That was cool. He praised Ric Flair. He mentioned Flair for a while, and that was good as well, because him and Flair, he sees Flair as one of those guys where that was his hero. And also, I forgot to mention earlier in the speech, he really thanked Dusty Rhodes. He got extremely emotional talking about Dusty Rhodes earlier in the speech, and he brought up, and you saw Cody get emotional as well, who was sitting in the front row. He really talked about how much Dusty meant to him, how much of an influence he had on him. He thanked Arn Anderson, he thanked Harley Race, and he thanked a whole bunch of guys. Tara Taylor, I believe I mentioned him already. A whole bunch of guys in WCW and that time when he first broke in, that they had such a profound influence. And then Ric Flair is none other than a lot. He didn't mention Flair as much as I thought he would. I don't think Flair was there. Flair is signed with AEW, so I don't think we saw Flair at the speech, but he mentioned Flair, and he really put over Randy Orton and Batista. He talked about how proud he is of them, how proud he is of Randy for having success, and how proud he is of Dave for having all the success he had. And he mentioned how that they were like the inspiration for him for NXT, and that's cool because he's responsible for both their successes, both those guys. He brought them in an evolution. Talked about NXT and how proud he is of them. Mentioned a whole bunch of names. Roman, he mentioned. Seth, he mentioned. Becky, Charlotte, Bayley, Bianca. There's a few other more stars he mentioned. I don't think he said Bray's name, but there was that tribute to Bray in that first video package. But there's a whole bunch of names for NXT. You can't just name everybody. And he talks about Shawn in NXT, how he tagged Shawn Michaels in, really talked about that. There was a lot of Shawn. He clearly could have gone a lot more, but he mentioned Shawn quite a bit because he was in every story. Their careers are intertwined, basically. He mentioned how he was basically trolling Shawn Michaels because he has such an early call time for NXT. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. Praised Bruce Pritchard. One guy he didn't mention, he didn't say anything about The Rock, which is interesting, but he couldn't mention everyone, but I noticed that there was a couple others that his career was attached to. Jericho not mentioned, Kane not mentioned. There were some guys he had a lot of programs, so if he can't mention everyone, that's unfair. But I thought Rock probably the one guy because they feuded for so long, but then he praised Bruce Pritchard. A lot of people don't like him. He put him over. He thanked Paul Heyman. Heyman was emotional, praised him. And then he finally talks about Linda McMahon, who was there sitting in the front row, praises her for her work in the WWF, WWE, and then her work serving in the Trump administration. Joked about Shane McMahon, who's not there. I forgot to mention Shane's not there. I don't know how close he is with his family, but he joked Shane shouldn't jump off anything. Shane wasn't there. And then also, he didn't mention Cena. I thought he mentioned John Cena. He didn't mention him. But he went to Vince McMahon, says it's complicated. He said he loves Vince. And the fact that he said it's complicated was interesting, because I'm sure a lot of people will talk about that. But he did mention Vince. It was impossible for him not to mention Vince McMahon. He thanked The Undertaker. He mentions how he went to him when he first met Stephanie and how Taker gave him the advice to go all the way with it, telling everyone, fuck them if you really love her, fuck whatever all these other wrestlers think. He really put over Taker. Said there's no one in the business he respects more than him. He talks a lot about his health scare in, I believe it was late 2021. And then he officially retired earlier in 2022, right before WrestleMania 38, when he put his boots down and thanked the fans. Yeah, I didn't realize how bad it was, where he had heart failure. I knew it was bad. I didn't think, he was it was close to death for him. He's very lucky. Talked about his daughters a lot. He mentioned each one of them. Talked about Stephanie McMahon and about their relationship. He says it's forever. He's mentioned, we know they're very close. That's not a surprise. But he did a good job mentioning his family. And then at the end, he brings up Nick Khan. He thanks him, how much he learned from him, really praised him. And then his final thank you was to the fans. He praises the fans, and he says, I will always work for you and always put on the best show for you. That was his message. And overall, I thought it was a very good speech. It was a great speech, long speech. And, there's a lot more you can say. You could thank, but, we would have been here. If people on the East Coast, we'd be here up until WrestleMania began. But yeah, it was a great speech, long speech. I don't know if it's as long as Undertaker's speech from a few years ago. It's either one of those two is the longest speech ever. It's Triple H. He deserves it. He should have as long a speech as he needs. All his contributions to WWE. It's great. So overall, I enjoyed his speech, and the ceremony as a whole. I liked it. I liked the format. I actually like that there's less inductees. I think there should be one headliner. He gets the big speech, a whole bunch of other inductees. I actually kind of like the format a little bit more now, and I preferred the Legacy. I think that was done really well, so much better than previous years. And I overall, I really enjoyed the Hall of Fame this year. So that wraps up another portion of WrestleMania weekend. And then I guess when I wake up, it'll officially be WrestleMania Saturday. But as for the Hall of Fame, signing off again, I hope they keep this format. I just wish they can find a way to have a better start time. There's so much that happens in WrestleMania week now. I was thinking maybe, SmackDown could be the Hall of Fame. But, instead of doing a 3-hour SmackDown, do a 3-hour Hall of Fame ceremony like it was tonight. But maybe that's not going to work. I don't know what USA wants. But I just wish they would, they need to do something with the Hall of Fame to set it up better. And I don't like the old format where it was right after SmackDown. I just wish they would do more and make it easier for us to watch, because it's hard if you have the Eastern time zone and it starts at 1 o'clock in the morning. And even if you're on the West Coast, still 10 at night, it's a long night. But the Start time was the problem, but I did like the Fontainebleau. It looks so. It's a really beautiful hotel and casino. And as I said before, the ceremony highlighted by Triple H's great speech. It was very good. So I thought the Hall of Fame this year at WrestleMania, I thought the Hall of Fame delivered in my opinion. And I hope they keep the format, as I said. I just wish they would have a more reasonable start time. That's it. Anyway, that was it.